What's up, Taiwan? I'm Joyce with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. We begin with the latest on Typhoon Kimi, which has left a trail of destruction across the country, with cleanup efforts now underway in many areas. Kimi has left 5 people dead and more than 600 injured. It's knocked out power to tens of thousands of households, though most of them are now back on the grid. While Kimi has now passed over the country, stay-at-home orders remain in place for much of the south, with schools and offices there shut for a third day in a row. Torrential downpours continue in southern and central Taiwan, including Kaohsiung, where Louise Watt joins us now. Louise, what are the conditions like there?
Taiwan has been seeing extreme rain, and particularly here in Taiwan's largest city in the south. Now, Kaohsiung has seen more than 1.6 meters of rainfall within the past 3 days. And some of the worst flooding as well, as you can imagine. I'm in Sanmin district, which is Kaohsiung's most populated district, and this road was flooded up to knee level. Now, most of it has receded now, but residents told me earlier that there are still hundreds of homes without power, and this is almost 24 hours since they first lost power. And there's a residential compound building on the road behind me, and that basement is still flooded. There are 3 floors of a car park, and it's still filled with water. So the hundreds of vehicles that are in there are basically, there's no getting them out. And there's an army truck trying to do what it can to pump water out. But I think it's going to be there for a while. Now, Kaohsiung's mayor says the city is experiencing the worst flooding since 1988. Taiwan's president even visited the city earlier today. He went to Mainong district, which itself has seen more than 1 meter of rainfall. And he vowed that the government would do more work to better combat heavy rainfall and improve infrastructure. Now, it's not clear what the details will be. And the residents who are here, the residents who have been cleaning up after the floods, will be waiting to hear what those details are in the coming days and weeks.
Thanks for that update, Louise. Take care out there. That was Louise Watt reporting live from Kaohsiung. Meanwhile, heavy rains are continuing over parts of Taiwan in the wake of Typhoon Kimi. People in mountainous areas and those affected by flooding are only beginning to see the full extent of the damage. Tiffany Wong reports.
Wading through storm waters, people in southern Taiwan are sifting through the aftermath of Typhoon Kimi, which killed at least 5 people and brought flooding, landslides, and power outages, affecting thousands of households around the country. In many of the worst affected areas, school and work have been stopped for a third day in a row, as they focus on recovery, which looks to be a long journey ahead.
现在直接看过去就是1.8米，要进去就是要游泳。南浦江全部。
The typhoon also damaged roads and even bridges, prompting officials to warn people out on the streets to be careful.
道路方面都因为很多的多处塌方，所以交通也是没办法进出。目前有派一些人去维修。
Several cargo ships near Taiwan's southern coast were also caught in the typhoon, which was downgraded to a tropical storm after ripping through the country. 5 of the vessels were grounded safely, but the search is still on for 5 Burmese crew members missing after their ship sank. As heavy rains continue to pelt the country, damage from the deadly storm may still worsen, and the full impact will only be known in the coming days. Chris Ma and Tiffany Wong for TaiwanPlus.
After leaving Taiwan, Typhoon Kimi made landfall in China, forcing nearly 250,000 people to be evacuated from their homes on the east coast. The storm hit coastal Fujian province on Thursday night and is expected to bring heavy rainfall across much of eastern China as it moves inland. Top government officials have been discussing flood prevention and disaster relief efforts. More than 5,000 rescuers are on standby across the region. Kimi is the biggest typhoon to hit China so far this year. U.S. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris have met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Washington. The U.S. leaders say there is a ceasefire deal on the table. A monumental week for U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris after being thrust into the race for the White House in President Joe Biden's place. She capped it off by meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, where she took a firmer tone than Biden, expressing serious concern about the scale of human suffering in Gaza.
We cannot look away in the face of these tragedies. We cannot allow ourselves to become numb to the suffering, and I will not be silent.
Harris says it's thanks to President Biden's leadership that there is a deal on the table for a ceasefire and hostage release, and she called on Netanyahu to get it done. This comes after the Israeli Prime Minister's fiery speech to U.S. Congress, where he provided few details of such a deal. Israel has been waging a war against Hamas in Gaza after the militant group raided Israel in October last year. Over 39,000 people have been killed and over 1 million displaced in the enclave. The resulting humanitarian crisis has raised widespread international concern and caused divisions in Biden's own Democratic Party. With less than 6 months left in his term, Biden met with the Israeli leader in the Oval Office, the first time in person since he flew to Israel in a show of support days after the Hamas attack.
Well, welcome back, Mr. Prime Minister. We got a lot to talk about.
Relations between the two nations have strained over Israel's military campaign. But the White House says they are closer now than ever to closing a 3-phase deal that would free the over 100 remaining hostages in Gaza and ensure, quote, a full and complete ceasefire. This hope was echoed by families of American hostages who met with Biden and Netanyahu in Washington.
We got absolute commitment from the Biden administration and from Prime Minister Netanyahu that they understand the urgency of this moment now, to waste no time and to complete this deal as it currently stands.
Outside the White House, pro-Palestinian protesters performed what they called a blood dump, pouring gallons of red-colored water on the street, angry at the scale of bloodshed in the ongoing conflict. Meanwhile, at home, growing backlash for Netanyahu as well, with protesters calling on him to bring back their loved ones and end the fighting once and for all. Klein Wang and Joyce for TaiwanPlus. Protests in Kenya have entered their 6th week even after the government rolled back a controversial tax bill. Protests began in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, in mid-June after the government proposed increasing taxes on basic commodities. Nearly 50 people have died and over 400 were injured in the clashes between protesters and the police. Kenyan President William Ruto says his government will roll back the controversial tax hikes and replace several ministers in his cabinet. Protesters are also demanding Ruto resign and are calling for greater government accountability. Japan says it plans to build a new missile test range on one of its Pacific islands as soon as 2026. Minami Torishima will be Japan's first test site for surface attack missiles with ranges exceeding 100 kilometers. The island, located over 1,800 kilometers from Tokyo, was chosen for its remoteness. Few ships pass through the area, and the island does not have a permanent population, only military personnel and weather researchers. Currently, Japan conducts most of its long-range missile testing in the United States and Australia. Top Japanese military officials say the new test site would improve its missile operations. The Philippines has ordered the shutdown of a sprawling network of online casinos that have been linked to criminal activity. As Rosie Greninger reports, these sites are used for illegal online scams where thousands of people are forced to work under the threat of torture.
Police raided this illegal online gambling complex in Bamban Tarlac, just 3 hours north of the Philippine capital Manila, after being alerted to it by an escaped worker. But when authorities got there, they uncovered something much more sinister. There were more than 700 Filipino and foreign workers trapped here in a sophisticated Chinese-run scam operation, equipped with its own hospital and torture rooms. The findings sparked the Philippine government to completely ban the online gambling industry early this week over its links to a stew of illegal activities.
their operations have ventured into illicit areas furthest from gaming, such as financial scamming, money laundering, prostitution, human trafficking, kidnapping, brutal torture, even murder. The grave abuse and disrespect to our system of laws must stop.
Authorities believe there could be several hundred of these sites, with over 100,000 employees operating in the Philippines. The online scam organizations, mostly run by Chinese nationals, rack in billions of US dollars. Crime syndicates lure, kidnap and coerce people to work in these centres from around Southeast Asia, often on the promise of romance or high-paying jobs. They are then forced into predatory behaviour online under the threat of harm or punishment. This Malaysian national, using an alias to protect his identity, was tricked into visiting the Ban Ban complex by a friend and never allowed to leave. He said he was made to work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, and feared he would die there.
Every month or every week you have a quota, like you need to make a client top up or anything. That quota you didn't hit, and then the reason is he will torture you. Yeah, like give you pressures or anything. You need to how to make the sales, something like that.
These offshore gambling operators, or POGOs as they're known here, flourished under former President Rodrigo Duterte, after the government regulator was given the right to issue operating licenses nationwide. But in 2023, soon after the end of Duterte's term, most of them lost their license and went underground. 5 operations have been raided since last year, but the Anti-Organised Crime Commission says there also needs to be a focus on public officials who allowed these centres to run in plain sight. It comes after the mayor of Ban Ban, Alice Guo, was found to be involved in the illicit operation. She was also accused of being a Chinese national posing as a Filipino. A warrant has been issued for her arrest, but there are fears she'll evade authorities by using the hospitals inside the scam centres to change her appearance with cosmetic surgery.
Heads need to roll, but by rolling we don't simply mean taking them out administratively, but bringing them to court criminally. Because once we start, if we don't start bringing people to court, if we don't start asking these people to spend time in jail, then we won't put an end to this problem.
While the Philippines cracks down on the sector, the issue has brought together 2 unusual partners, Beijing and Manila. China issuing a rare compliment to the Philippines for outlawing these gambling sites, amid worsening territorial disputes between the 2 nations in the South China Sea. And as Philippine authorities race to shut down the sites under new laws, transforming some into government buildings, a Senate committee continues to investigate the online gambling industry, aiming to bring the ugly underbelly of the sector to a close. Justin Wu and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
Hsinchu Mayor Kaohsiung has been found guilty of corruption. Gao was convicted for embezzling public funds and sentenced to 7 years and 4 months behind bars. Gao says she will appeal the verdict and has left the Taiwan People's Party. Gao was the first female mayor of Hsinchu City and the youngest person ever elected mayor in Taiwan's history. Taiwan's stocks tumbled Friday, with the benchmark index closing down 3.3%. The drop comes as U.S. tech stocks continue to fall, and a severe typhoon forced Taiwan's markets to close for 2 days. TSMC, Taiwan's highest value stock, fell by more than 5%. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. For more on the latest on Typhoon Kimi's aftermath, stay tuned to TaiwanPlus. I'm Joyce. Take care and stay safe.